The silver ships appeared without warning. One moment Earth's skies were clear, and the next, they weren't. Sleek vessels hung in orbit like metallic clouds, their hulls reflecting sunlight in bright flashes that could be seen even in daylight. Within hours, every satellite communication network was hijacked, every television broadcast interrupted, every radio signal overtaken. Commander Talek's face filled screens worldwide. The alien had gray-blue skin and 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern. When he spoke, his words were translated perfectly into each region's primary language. "People of Earth," he began, his voice deep and measured. "I am Commander Talek of the Galactic Empire's Diplomatic Corps. Our sensors have detected your civilization's advancement to the brink of faster-than-light travel. As per Imperial Protocol 357, we are here to offer you the opportunity to join our collective." People in town squares, living rooms, and offices around the world stood frozen, watching as the alien continued. "The terms are simple. Earth will surrender its sovereignty and accept imperial governance. You will receive protection, technology, and eventual citizenship after a standard adjustment period of 50 Earth years." Talek's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "You have 30 Earth days to submit your formal acceptance. Refusal or resistance will require pacification of your planet." The broadcast ended with coordinates for Earth's leaders to send their response. Within minutes, the world erupted in chaos. Stock markets crashed. Religious leaders called for prayer. Military forces worldwide went to their highest alert status. In New York, the United Nations building became the center of frantic activity. Representatives from every nation arrived for an emergency session, their faces grave as they hurried past reporters. Inside the main chamber, the Secretary General called for order as voices rose in panic. "We must surrender immediately," shouted one representative. "Did you see their ships? We have no defense against such technology." "Never," countered another. "Better to fight than live as slaves." Arguments escalated until the Secretary General's gavel cracked against wood. "Please, we need solutions, not shouting." A side door opened, and heads turned as an elderly Asian man in a simple dark suit entered. He walked slowly, aided by a cane, but his back remained straight, his gaze sharp. "Admiral Lee Jun-ho," whispered several representatives in recognition. Admiral Lee had been a legendary naval commander before his retirement 15 years ago. Now in his 80s, he remained a respected voice in international security matters, though he had largely disappeared from public life. "Admiral," the Secretary General acknowledged with surprise. "We didn't expect you." Lee nodded politely. "I apologize for the interruption, but there is information you need before making any decisions." The room quieted as he made his way to the podium. Without preamble, he activated a small device he carried. A 3-dimensional projection appeared above the assembly. Detailed schematics of what appeared to be massive ships, alongside technical specifications. "What you're seeing is classified at the highest level," Lee said calmly. "But circumstances require disclosure." He tapped the device again, and the image changed to show underwater facilities of incredible size. 63 years ago, we detected signals from the direction of Ta City. They weren't meant for us. We simply intercepted communications between Empire vessels. It gave us our first warning that we weren't alone. Murmurs spread through the chamber as Lee continued. A small group of nations formed the Earth Defense Initiative. Over decades, it expanded to include every country represented in this room, though only a handful of individuals from each nation were aware. More images appeared. Construction sites inside hollowed-out mountains, asteroid bases, underwater shipyards. While the public saw our space agencies making small steps into orbit and to our moon, the real work happened in secret, Lee explained. "We've been preparing for this day since before most of you were born." "That's impossible," said the Chinese representative. "Such a program would require trillions in funding, thousands of workers." "It did," Lee interrupted. "The funding came from a shadow percentage of every nation's defense budget, listed under various classified projects. As for personnel, we have over 40,000 people who have lived their entire careers in secret facilities. Their families believe they work for deep-sea mining operations, remote research stations, or classified military projects, which isn't entirely untrue. The Admiral's eyes swept across the shocked faces. "The ships you see in orbit are merely scouts," he told the assembly, his voice firm. "What we have hidden will change the course of this confrontation." He pressed another button, and new images appeared. Massive warships under construction in enormous underwater hangars, weapons testing facilities on the far side of the moon, fighter squadrons hidden in bunkers beneath the world's deserts and mountains. We have 57 capital ships ready to deploy, each larger than anything the Empire has in orbit right now. Our intelligence suggests their main fleet is 3 systems away, which gives us time to prepare. The room had gone completely silent. "But Admiral," the Secretary General finally said, "how could we possibly match their technology? They cross interstellar space. We barely reached Mars." Lee smiled slightly. "We've had help. In 1997, one of their scout ships crashed in the Pacific Ocean. In 2014, we captured another near Jupiter. Reverse engineering gave us tremendous advantages. We're still behind in some areas, but we've developed unique approaches they won't expect." He turned off the projection. "I'm not saying victory is assured. I'm saying we have options beyond simple surrender. The defensive fleet is ready to deploy on your order." He looked around the room. "I suggest we use these 30 days wisely, not to prepare terms of surrender, but to finalize our battle strategy." The French representative stood. "If what you're saying is true, why reveal our strength at all? Why not simply surrender officially while preparing to strike?" "Because deception has its limits," Lee replied. "The moment we deploy our fleet, they'll know we've been preparing. Better to negotiate from a position of acknowledged strength than to rely on surprise alone." The assembly broke into discussion, hope beginning to replace fear on many faces. The Secretary General raised a hand for quiet. "Admiral Lee, who commands this secret fleet. Admiral Kim Dae-sung has operational command, with 5 fleet commanders under him. I serve only as advisor now," Lee said. "I can arrange for you to visit the Pacific Command Center to see everything firsthand. A submarine is waiting at the New York Naval Yard to transport whoever you designate." As the meeting continued, Admiral Lee stepped away from the podium. He looked out the windows at the alien ships visible as tiny points of light in the blue sky. For 6 decades, he had helped prepare humanity for this moment. Now it had finally arrived. Outside, crowds gathered in the streets, their faces turned upward in fear. They didn't yet know that beneath the oceans, beneath the earth, humanity's defenders were awakening. They didn't know that the response to the Empire's demand was already being prepared, not in words, but in steel and fire. The 30-day countdown had begun. The rain fell in sheets over the small observatory in South Korea. It was past midnight, and most of the staff had gone home hours ago. Only Dr. Kim Hyun-woo remained, his eyes fixed on the data scrolling across his screen. For the past 3 weeks, the same pattern had appeared during his deep space scans. At first, he dismissed it as equipment error, but after recalibrating his instruments, the signal persisted. Dr. Kim took a sip of cold coffee and adjusted his glasses. At 52, he was considered brilliant but eccentric by his colleagues. His obsession with finding patterns in deep space radio waves had become a running joke at the observatory. Tonight, that persistence had paid off. "This is not random," he whispered to himself. The signals came from the direction of Ta Sidi, repeating in precise intervals. More importantly, they contained mathematical sequences that couldn't occur naturally. Dr. Kim picked up the phone with shaking hands. He had a friend at the Defense Ministry who had once mentioned calling if he ever found anything unusual. He'd thought it was a joke at the time. 3 days later, Dr. Kim found himself in a windowless room in Seoul, explaining his findings to 6 stern-faced officials. They asked detailed questions about his methodology, the signal patterns, and potential natural explanations. Could this be from another Earth observatory? A satellite? Space junk? Asked the general with silver hair. Impossible, Dr. Kim replied. The signal origin is 12 light years away. And the pattern? It's a language. I'm certain of it. The officials exchanged glances. One of them nodded almost imperceptibly. Dr. Kim, said the general, what we discuss next will not leave this room. That meeting marked the beginning of Project SHIELD. Dr. Kim's discovery wasn't the first hint of extraterrestrial intelligence, but it was the most convincing. The signals weren't directed at Earth. They were communications between ships of what the recordings identified as the Imperial Fleet. Over the next 5 years, linguists, mathematicians, and cryptographers worked to decipher more of the intercepted communications. They learned about an interstellar empire that expanded by absorbing or eliminating less advanced civilizations. Earth was mentioned occasionally, classified as a developing world, still decades from achieving the technology that would bring it to the empire's attention. As the potential threat became clear, Project SHIELD expanded. What began with 7 nations grew to include 20, then 40. Resources were redirected through shadowy budget items. Military research, deep-sea exploration initiatives, and classified aerospace projects. The first shipyard was built beneath the Pacific Ocean, 3,000 meters down where no civilian vessel could accidentally discover it. Workers lived in underwater habitats for months at a time, told their families they were on classified military assignments, which wasn't a lie. Yu Minho was one of the first engineers recruited. Fresh from university with a brilliant mind for structural design, he was approached by a government official who offered him the chance to work on something that would change history. 15 years later, he supervised the completion of Earth's first true battleship, a vessel designed to fight in space. We learned from them, but we build for ourselves, became the project's unofficial motto. When a small Imperial scout ship crashed in the Pacific in 1997, recovery teams worked quickly to secure it before anyone noticed. The technology inside advanced the project by decades. By its 20th year, Project SHIELD operated facilities around the world, shipyards under every major ocean, mining operations in asteroids, research centers disguised as private companies, and training facilities hidden within existing military bases. More than 40,000 people worked directly for the project, each knowing only what they needed to. Park Sun-mi joined in 2015, recruited from a robotics program in Seoul. Her specialty was automation systems that could repair damage during combat. At 32, she became the youngest chief engineer in the project's history, overseeing the construction of what would become Earth's flagship, the Defender. Now, 25 years after joining the project, Park stood in the massive construction bay of the underwater Pacific shipyard. Before her stretched the nearly completed Defender, its hull gleaming under the powerful lights. At 1,500 meters long, it dwarfed anything humanity had publicly admitted to building. Its weapons systems could target objects across half the solar system. Its engines, reverse-engineered from recovered alien technology, could propel it to Mars in days rather than months. "Amazing, isn't it?" said Admiral Han beside her. "Sometimes I still can't believe we built this." Park nodded, her experienced eyes checking the external armor plating. The new alloy integration is complete. It should absorb energy weapons much better than previous designs. They walked along the observation platform that gave them a view of the ship's length. Workers in specialized suits moved across the hull, making final adjustments and checks. "The engines?" asked Admiral Han. "Testing completed last week. They perform at 112% of design specifications." Park allowed herself a small smile of pride. "We've improved on their technology in some ways." The Admiral nodded, his face serious. "Construction reports from the Atlantic Yard confirm their flagship will be ready within the month as well. Mars Base has completed the last of their destroyer-class vessels." Park knew what he was thinking. "You still worry it won't be enough, don't you?" He turned to face her. We're building weapons based on technology we barely understand, to fight an enemy we've never seen. For 50 years, we've prepared for a confrontation that might never come, or might arrive tomorrow. Park ran her hand along the railing, feeling the cool metal under her fingers. Every generation has its purpose. Ours is to prepare. Perhaps our children's will be to fight. She looked up at the massive ship. Or perhaps just knowing we can fight will be enough. An alert sounded on Park's communicator. She checked the message and her eyes widened slightly. "What is it?" asked the Admiral. "Deep Space Monitoring Station. Alpha has detected anomalies at the edge of our solar system. Multiple objects decelerating from faster-than-light travel." They stood in silence for a moment. The implications clear. "It seems we finished just in time," Admiral Hand said quietly. Park's mind raced through checklists, systems that needed final checks, crew assignments that had to be completed. 50 years of preparation might not be enough, but it was what they had. "I'll begin final launch preparations," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. As Admiral Han left to notify command, Park turned back to the magnificent vessel. She placed her hand on the cold metal of the hull, feeling the slight vibration of systems already running within it. 50 years of human ingenuity, dedication, and secrecy had created this marvel. Now they would discover if it was enough. "Time to show them what humans can build," she whispered to the ship. Throughout the underwater base, alerts began to sound. Crew members who had trained for years hurried to their stations. In similar facilities around the world and beyond, the same scene played out. Humanity's hidden fleet was awakening, preparing to reveal itself to both Earth's population and the arriving empire. The moment they had both feared and prepared for had finally arrived. The New York harbor looked different today. Military vessels from nations that rarely cooperated formed a protective ring around the area. The Statue of Liberty stood as a silent witness, her torch raised high as if in defiance rather than welcome. On Liberty Island, a large stage had been constructed facing the water. Rows of chairs held diplomats and officials from every nation on Earth. Ambassador Talek sat in the front row, flanked by 4 Imperial guards. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence as he surveyed the gathering. The humans had been surprisingly organized in their acceptance of Imperial rule. When they had requested this formal ceremony to mark their surrender, he had approved it as a psychological kindness. Let them have their dignity in submission. The Secretary General of the United Nations approached the podium. Behind him sat the leaders of Earth's most powerful nations, their faces solemn. Ambassador Talek, the Secretary General, began. 30 days ago, you came to Earth with an ultimatum. Today, we deliver our response." Talek nodded, expecting the formal words of surrender he had heard on 100 worlds before. The Secretary General continued, "For centuries, humanity has looked to the stars and wondered if we were alone. Now we know we are not. Today marks a new chapter in human history, but not the one you anticipated." Something in the human's tone made Talek sit straighter. A signal passed between the Secretary General and an aide who spoke quietly into a communication device. "Ambassador, you offered us a choice between submission and destruction. We have prepared a third option." The water of the harbor began to churn. At first, it seemed like a small disturbance, but it quickly grew. The surface broke as something massive rose from below. Water cascaded off metal surfaces that gleamed in the sunlight. A ship, no, a warship, was emerging from the depths. Its size defied belief, dwarfing the aircraft carriers that humans typically built. As Talek stood in shock, the enormous vessel continued to rise until it hovered above the harbor, water still streaming from its hull. On its side, in multiple Earth languages, was the name Defender. But it wasn't alone. The waters broke again as a second massive ship emerged, then a third. Within minutes, 5 colossal warships hovered above New York Harbor, their engines humming with barely contained power. Talek's communication device buzzed urgently. "Ambassador, we're detecting multiple launches from Mars and Jupiter's moons. Massive vessels, warships, dozens of them. Our sensors indicate technology comparable to mid-tier Imperial designs. Impossible, Talek whispered, but the evidence hovered before him. The crowd remained silent, watching his reaction. The Secretary General spoke again. What you see is only a fraction of Earth's defensive fleet. For 50 years, we have prepared for this day. While our public space programs took small steps, our true efforts remained hidden. Screens activated around the stage, showing more ships emerging from oceans around the world, rising from hidden bases in mountains, and approaching from Mars and the moons of Jupiter. You thought us primitive, the Secretary General continued. You thought us unprepared. You were wrong. A small shuttle detached from the flagship and descended toward the stage. It landed with barely a sound, its design unlike anything publicly known to exist on Earth. The door opened, and a man in a dark blue uniform stepped out. He wore the insignia of a captain, his posture military and precise. Captain Kang Ta-1 of the Earth Defense Fleet, the Secretary General announced. Captain Kang approached the podium, his eyes meeting Talek's without fear. Ambassador Talek, he said, his voice carrying across the now silent crowd. I command the Defender, flagship of humanity's fleet. My ship carries enough firepower to destroy your orbiting vessels in seconds. The rest of our fleet could intercept your main force before it reaches Earth orbit. Talek's guards moved closer, hands on weapons. The ambassador raised a hand to stop them. This is unexpected, he admitted. Your planet showed no signs of such advancement. That was the point, Captain Kang replied. We've known about the Empire since we intercepted your communications 50 years ago. We've been monitoring your expansion, your tactics, your technology. We've prepared accordingly. On the screens, more ships appeared, smaller, faster vessels forming defensive formations around the larger warships. A display showed their numbers. Over 300 vessels of various classes, all armed and ready. You come from a culture that respects strength, Captain Kang continued. So let me be clear. We do not wish for war, but we are prepared for it. He gestured to the ships hovering above the harbor. The terms of our surrender are these. Recognize Earth as an equal or prepare for war. The choice is yours. Ambassador Talek stood still, his mind racing. In 300 years of imperial expansion, no developing world had ever revealed such capabilities. His orders didn't cover this situation. You understand, he said carefully, that the imperial fleet is vast. What you show today is impressive, but you wonder if it's enough, Captain Kang finished for him. A valid question. Allow me to demonstrate one of our defensive capabilities. He nodded to an aide, who transmitted a command. High above, one of the smaller Earth vessels approached an unoccupied area of space. A pulse of energy shot from the ship, opening what appeared to be a tear in space itself. The tear expanded, stabilized, and then closed again. A controlled spatial distortion, Captain Kang explained. We can disrupt faster than light travel within our solar system. Your reinforcements would need to arrive the slow way, giving us plenty of time to prepare. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Even Earth's representatives seemed surprised by this revelation. Ambassador Talek's communication device buzzed again. The message was brief but concerning. Their scans confirmed the humans' claim. The technology was real. You've been thorough, Talek conceded. But submission to the Empire brings benefits, protection, technology, eventual citizenship. We protect ourselves, Captain Kang replied. As for technology, we've made our own advances. And citizenship, we prefer to meet as equals. The captain handed Talek a data device. This contains our proposed treaty of mutual recognition and non-aggression. We offer trade, cultural exchange, and limited military cooperation against common threats. What we do not offer is submission. Talek took the device, 6 eyes blinking rapidly as he considered his options. Fighting these humans would be costly, perhaps prohibitively so. Their knowledge of imperial tactics gave them an advantage. And if their spatial distortion technology worked as claimed, reinforcements wouldn't arrive in time to matter. "I will need to consult with Imperial Command," he said finally. "Of course," Captain Kang responded. "You have our communication frequencies. We await your response." He turned to leave, then paused. "Ambassador, one more thing. The Empire has a history of testing new opponents, a single strike to assess their real capabilities. I strongly advise against this. Our response would be disproportionate." With that warning, Captain Kang returned to his shuttle. As it lifted off, the massive ships began to move in formation, their engines glowing brighter as they ascended into the sky. Ambassador Talek watched them go, the data device heavy in his hand. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he had encountered a species that had completely upended Imperial protocols. As he prepared to return to his own ship, he realized that whatever happened next would change the Empire forever. These humans had done what no other species had managed. They had prepared in secret, studied their potential conquerors, and emerged ready for the confrontation. In orbit, Captain Kang returned to Defender's Bridge. His officers stood at attention as he entered. "Status report," he ordered, settling into the command chair. "All ships report ready, Captain," his first officer replied. "The fleet is in defensive formation. Weapons are hot but safe." Captain Kang nodded, looking at the tactical display, showing the Imperial ships still in high orbit. "Now we wait to see if they're wise enough to choose peace." On the main view screen, Earth rotated slowly beneath them, beautiful and now, perhaps, proving itself powerful enough to remain free. Imperial Commander Vex stared at the small research station orbiting Titan. His fleet of 7 warships had arrived at the edge of Saturn's rings an hour ago, their engines dark to avoid early detection. The human outpost looked pathetically vulnerable, a collection of habitation modules, solar arrays, and small defense turrets that wouldn't threaten even his smallest vessel. "Scans complete," Commander reported his sensor officer. 23 humans aboard. Minimal defensive capabilities. No military vessels detected within the Saturn system. Vex nodded, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "Perfect. This will serve as an appropriate demonstration." 3 days had passed since the humans had revealed their hidden fleet and refused to surrender. Imperial High Command had been divided on how to respond. Some counseled caution, while others dismissed human capabilities as exaggerated. In the end, they had authorized this limited strike to test Earth's resolve and response time. "The nearest human military vessel is stationed at Jupiter," his tactical officer added. "Even at their best speed, they cannot reach this position for at least 6 hours. "Then we proceed as planned," Vex ordered. "Targeting systems online. Prepare to fire warning shots across their habitat modules. Communications, prepare to broadcast surrender demands." His bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. This would be a simple operation. Damage the station enough to show Imperial power, accept their surrender, then withdraw before significant Earth forces could respond. High Command would analyze the humans' reaction and plan accordingly. "Sir," the communications officer called out suddenly. "We're receiving an automated message from the research station." "Put it through," Vex ordered. A calm human voice filled the bridge. "Attention approaching vessels. You have entered restricted space. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose. Be advised that this station is under the protection of the Earth Defense Fleet. Unauthorized hostile actions will result in immediate military response." Vex made a sound of amusement. "Empty threats. Proceed with the attack." His lead vessel fired precision shots that destroyed one of the station's communication arrays. The message was clear: surrender or be destroyed. "Sir," the sensor officer's voice rose in alarm. Multiple spatial distortions forming at coordinates 227 by 43. Vex turned to the main view screen just as space itself seemed to tear open. Through the distortions came 5 human warships, their engines glowing bright against the darkness. They moved into attack formation with disturbing speed. "Impossible," Vex muttered. "They couldn't have responded so quickly unless..." They were already here, his second-in-command finished, hidden somewhere in the system. Before Vex could issue new orders, his tactical officer shouted, "They're firing." The lead human vessel, smaller than his command ship but faster, launched a barrage that struck his forward shields with surprising force. The other human ships split into two groups, executing a pincer movement that threatened to surround his fleet. Evasive maneuvers, Vex ordered. All ships, combat formation Delta. Return fire. As his fleet responded, Vex realized with growing concern that the humans weren't fighting like novices. Their ships moved with the precision of veterans, anticipating his maneuvers almost before he made them. On the bridge of the Earth vessel Sentinel, Captain Kang Tawan watched the Imperial ships scramble to respond. "They're forming Delta pattern," reported his tactical officer, just as the simulations predicted. For 50 years, Earth had studied Imperial battle tactics through intercepted communications and data recovered from crashed vessels. They had run countless simulations based on this intelligence. Now, that preparation was paying off. "Execute counter-pattern Sigma," Kang ordered. "Defender and Eclipse maintain distance and target their command ship's propulsion systems. Valiant and Dauntless prepare for the flanking run." His officers responded instantly, the ships moving in perfect coordination. The Imperial vessels attempted to regroup, but Earth's ships seemed to anticipate every move. In the Imperial command ship, Officer Gresh stared at the tactical display with growing alarm. "Sir, they're using our own formations against us, but better," he reported to Commander Vex. "They counter each pattern as if they knew it in advance." Vex gripped his command chair. Impossible. These humans couldn't possibly know our battle doctrine. Yet the evidence was clear on the displays. The human ships had already disabled two of his smaller vessels and were systematically picking apart his formation. "New contact," shouted his sensor officer. Massive vessel emerging from behind Titan. The largest human ship yet appeared, dwarfing even Vex's command vessel. It moved with surprising speed for its size, cutting off his fleet's escape route. "Defender to all Earth vessels," Captain Kang's voice came through the command channel. "Execute Operation Snare." The trap closed with brutal efficiency. Caught between the smaller, faster Earth ships and the massive Defender, the Imperial fleet found themselves in a crossfire. Their shields began failing under the coordinated barrage. Commander Vex knew he had only one option left. "Prepare for emergency jump to light speed. We must report back tow." His words were cut short as a concentrated beam from Defender struck his engine section, disabling the faster-than-light drive. "Sir, we've lost jump capability," Officer Gresh reported, his voice tight. 3 vessels destroyed, 2 disabled. We're being targeted by multiple weapon systems." On Defender's bridge, Captain Kang watched the disabled Imperial command ship drift helplessly. "Cease fire on the command vessel," he ordered. "Prepare boarding teams. I want that ship intact." Lieutenant Park Minho led the boarding party that breached the Imperial vessel. His team moved through the corridors with practiced precision, neutralizing resistance with non-lethal stun weapons. Years of training in captured Imperial ship layouts made navigation simple. Within 20 minutes, they had secured the bridge. Commander Vex sat rigid in his command chair, surrounded by Earth soldiers. "Your vessel is captured," Lieutenant Park stated simply. "Your crew will not be harmed if they cooperate." Vex stared at the human with all 6 eyes. "You were waiting for us." "Of course," Park replied. "We've monitored your communications since you entered our system. We knew exactly where you would strike." While the boarding teams secured the Imperial vessel, specialists downloaded its database. The information they found proved more valuable than the ship itself. Back on Defender's bridge, Captain Kang reviewed the preliminary findings with growing interest. "The Empire isn't as unified as they want us to believe," he told his officers. "There are at least 3 major factions competing for influence. The faction that ordered this attack, the Expansion Directorate, is just one of them. The others include the Commerce Guild and the Reform Coalition. The Reform Coalition appears to favor peaceful contact with developing worlds, added his intelligence officer. They opposed this attack, but were overruled. Kang studied the data carefully. So we're not facing a monolithic enemy. This gives us options. Within hours, the battle was completely over. 5 Imperial vessels destroyed, 2 captured, including the command ship. Earth had suffered minimal damage to 2 ships and no personnel losses. Captain Kang prepared his report for Earth Command. The battle had proven 3 crucial points. Earth's technology was indeed competitive with the Empire's. Their tactical knowledge gave them a significant advantage, and perhaps most importantly, the Empire itself was vulnerable not just militarily but politically. As Defender and the rest of the fleet secured their position around Saturn, Commander Vex was brought to Kang's ready room. The Imperial officer stood stiffly, his pride visibly wounded. "You knew we would attack here," Vex stated. "You prepared specifically for this location." Kang nodded. "We placed ships at every likely target in our system. Saturn was actually our 3rd priority." Vex's eyes widened slightly. "There are more of your ships elsewhere." "Many more," Kang confirmed. "This was only a small part of our fleet." Whether this was entirely true was irrelevant. The demonstration had served its purpose. "You will be treated according to interstellar conventions for military prisoners," Kang continued. "In the meantime, we're sending a message to your High Command. The data we've acquired makes it clear which factions might be open to negotiation." Vex's posture stiffened further. "The Empire does not negotiate with. The Empire has never encountered a species that was ready for them," Kang interrupted. "That has changed. Your attack has given us everything we need to approach the Reform Coalition directly. I suspect they'll be quite interested in opening diplomatic channels after this demonstration." As Vex was escorted out, Captain Kang turned to the viewport, watching Saturn's rings glitter in the distant sunlight. The first real battle between Earth and the Empire had ended decisively. Now came the more complicated part, turning military victory into lasting peace. In Imperial space, news of the defeat would soon reach the different factions. The political balance would shift, and humanity would find itself with unexpected allies in an empire they had prepared to fight for half a century. The imperial capital sprawled across the surface of a moon orbiting a gas giant. Towering spires of crystal and metal reflected the distant sun's light in rainbow patterns. Ships of various designs moved through designated flight paths in the atmosphere, creating a complex aerial dance that never stopped. The Earth vessel Defender emerged from its faster-than-light jump at the designated coordinates. Though massive by human standards, it seemed almost modest compared to some of the Imperial warships patrolling the outer reaches of the capital system. Still, its arrival caused a stir among Imperial traffic controllers. Earth vessel Defender requesting permission to approach the capital, transmitted Commander Yoon, the ship's communications officer. "We carry the official diplomatic delegation from Earth." After a brief pause, permission was granted. A squadron of Imperial escort ships moved into position around Defender, both a courtesy and a precaution. Captain Kang watched from the bridge as they approached the sprawling city. "Quite a sight," murmured Admiral Lee beside him. At 83, the Admiral had never expected to see an alien world, let alone as Earth's chief representative. His inclusion in the delegation had been symbolic but necessary. He represented the continuity of the 50-year preparation that had brought them to this moment. Different from the simulations, Kang agreed. More alive. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, but everyone found moments to glance at the view screens showing the alien city growing larger. For all their preparation, this was still humanity's first official visit to an extraterrestrial civilization. History was being made with every passing second. The diplomatic team assembled in the shuttle bay. Besides Admiral Lee and Captain Kang, the delegation included representatives from Earth's major regions, scientists, cultural experts, and a small security detail. Dr. Park Sun-mai was among them, her engineering expertise deemed valuable for technical discussions. "Remember," Admiral Lee addressed them one final time. We represent not just our nations, but our entire species. We come as equals, not supplicants. The shuttle departed Defenders Bay, escorted by smaller Imperial vessels toward a massive landing platform extending from one of the larger structures. As they approached, they could see a gathering of Imperial officials waiting. Nervous? Dr. Park asked Captain Kang as they prepared to disembark. Cautiously optimistic, he replied. The Reform Coalition gained significant influence after Saturn. They have a vested interest in making this work. The battle near Saturn 3 months ago had indeed changed everything. The defeat of the Imperial attack force had sent shockwaves through Imperial politics. The Expansion Directorate, which had ordered the attack, lost standing. The Reform Coalition, which had opposed it, gained power. Earth had strategically released parts of the captured data, revealing the divisions within the Empire to its own citizens. Now, an historic treaty was about to be negotiated, not one of surrender, but of mutual recognition. The shuttle doors opened to reveal a platform bathed in the light of the gas giant looming large in the sky. The Imperial Welcoming Committee stood in a semicircle, varied species that all owed allegiance to the Empire. At their center stood Councillor Mira, leader of the Reform Coalition, and now the Empire's chief diplomat. Unlike Commander Talek, who had first delivered the surrender demand to Earth, Councillor Mira had only 4 eyes arranged horizontally. Her skin was pale blue, and she wore elaborate robes of office that shimmered with embedded technology. "Welcome to Imperialis," she greeted them in perfect English. "The High Council awaits your delegation." Admiral Lee stepped forward, performing the greeting gesture they had learned from the cultural briefings. "We thank you for your welcome, Councillor Mira. Earth is honored to begin this new chapter in our relationship." They proceeded through vast corridors, lined with artwork and historical displays from 1,000 worlds. Imperial citizens watched the human delegation with undisguised curiosity. For most, these were the first humans they had ever seen in person. The High Council chamber was a circular room with tiered seating that rose toward the ceiling. Representatives from major Imperial worlds filled the seats, their murmured conversations creating a background hum that ceased when the Earth delegation entered. The 7 members of the High Council sat on a raised platform at the center. Besides Councillor Mira, 2 others were known to support peaceful relations with Earth. The remaining 4, including representatives from the Expansion Directorate, were more skeptical. "The delegation from Earth may approach," announced the High Chancellor, an ancient-looking being with skin like polished stone. Admiral Lee led the group forward. Months of preparation, decades of work, and millennia of human history had led to this moment. "Esteemed members of the High Council," he began, his voice steady despite his age. "3 months ago, your empire came to our world with an ultimatum. Today, we come to yours with an opportunity." He paused, looking around the chamber. "We come neither as conquerors nor as subjects. Humanity offers alliance to those who respect us, and resistance to those who don't." A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. The directness of the statement was unusual in Imperial diplomacy, but it reflected Earth's position perfectly. "Your victory at Saturn was impressive," said one of the council members from the Expansion Directorate. "But a single battle does not make you our equals." Captain Kang stepped forward at a nod from Admiral Lee. "Respectfully, Counselor, equality is not something earned through battle. It is inherent. We demonstrated our capability not to claim superiority, but to prevent subjugation." He activated a small projector that displayed Earth's solar system, with highlighted points showing Earth's defensive capabilities. "We have secured our system with technology comparable to yours. We have studied your culture, your history, your politics. We have prepared for conflict for 50 years, but we prefer peace." Councillor Mira's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of approval in her species. "The Reform Coalition agrees. The old ways of expansion through conquest have limited our true potential. New allies bring new ideas, new technologies, new perspectives. The debate continued for hours. Earth's delegation presented their case with clarity and confidence. When technical questions arose, Dr. Park provided expertise. When legal precedents were discussed, Earth's legal team demonstrated surprising knowledge of imperial law. Throughout it all, the underlying message remained consistent. Earth would not be conquered, but it would be a valuable ally. As the formal session ended, the real negotiations began in smaller chambers. For 3 days, the details were hammered out. Trade agreements, technology exchange protocols, military cooperation parameters, and cultural exchange programs. On the 4th day, the treaty was ready. The High Council chamber was filled beyond capacity as representatives from across the Empire gathered to witness the historic moment. The Treaty of Mutual Recognition and Cooperation was displayed on screens throughout the chamber. Its key provisions were revolutionary by imperial standards. Earth would remain fully sovereign. A limited technology exchange would begin immediately. Earth would have representation in imperial affairs, but would not be subject to imperial laws within its own system. A defensive alliance would protect both parties from external threats. Cultural and scientific exchanges would be encouraged and protected. When Admiral Lee and the High Chancellor pressed their hands to the authentication panel, the treaty became official. Applause, a human custom that some of the imperial representatives had adopted, rang through the chamber. As the ceremonies concluded, Captain Kang found himself on an observation deck overlooking the capital city with Counselor Mira. "Your world has changed the Empire," she said quietly. "For centuries, we expanded without question. Developing worlds either joined us or were destroyed. You showed us a third path." Kang watched the endless flow of ships against the backdrop of the gas giant. "We prepared for war for 50 years. I never expected to find allies instead of enemies." "The best warriors are those who prefer peace," Mira replied. "There are other challenges ahead. Not all within the Empire accept this treaty. Some will test it. Let them try," Kang said calmly. "Humanity didn't stop preparing when we revealed our fleet. We continue to build, to improve, to adapt." As if to punctuate his point, a transmission came through from Earth. New warships had been launched from the underwater shipyards. The defense of humanity's home would never again rely on secrecy alone. The Earth delegation departed the next day, carrying copies of the treaty and vast amounts of data about the greater galaxy. As Defender jumped to faster-than-light speed, Admiral Lee stood on the bridge beside Captain Kang. "When I joined Project SHIELD as a young man," the Admiral said, "I never imagined I would live to see this day. I thought we were preparing for the fight of our lives." "We were," Captain Kang replied. "But sometimes showing you're ready to fight is enough to avoid fighting altogether." As Earth grew visible on their screens during their return approach, both men felt the weight of what they had accomplished. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged not just intact but stronger, recognized as equals in a universe far larger and more complex than they had imagined. The treaty signed that day would be remembered not just as the moment Earth joined the galactic community, but as the beginning of a transformation that would eventually reshape the Empire itself.